Okay, we're going to make versatile pasta today, and today we're going to use lobster as the meat. So the first thing we want to do is have a skillet here and add a fair amount of olive oil. You can add more later if we need to. I'm going to turn that on a pretty good brisk heat, and then I'm going to add a lot of basil. Now you can measure this out. It's like 2 or 3 tablespoons, but I just kind of dust it in there really good. And then I do a few red pepper flakes. Not too many, just a little bit so that every once in a while you get a taste of heat. Okay, and then I'm going to add some garlic. And I'm going to say that's probably 2 cloves worth, something along those lines. And so now I'm going to stir this up. I'm going to stir this up and just kind of let it turn into a flavored oil, if you will. And I'm gonna let that simmer for quite a while. Okay, now 2 important ingredients that we're gonna have in this versatile pasta, and I call it versatile pasta because you can leave pretty much anything out, or you can add lots of different things. Sun-dried tomatoes, that's one of the key ingredients in my opinion. So these right here are sun-dried tomatoes packed in olive oil, and when they're in the fridge, that olive oil sets up and they're kind of, you can see they're kind of pasty. But I'm just going to take these and, they're in pieces, but it's got to be a lot finer than it currently is. So there's a lot of ways you can chop this, but I like to just kind of have at it for a minute, different directions. So that's pretty good. Now let's separate that over there. Now we also use these I don't know if it matters what kind of brand, but we use the roasted bell peppers, and they're quite pretty. You can see I lay them out like that. We'll do 2 colors today. Okay, so you can see I'm just gonna kind of julienne these in long strips. Going to get too accurate. And now I'll chop them the other way, give myself lots of little ones, little pieces. You can see kind of the burnt marks on how they were grilled, which is great. That's good flavor. Actually, we buy these in bulk ourselves, and we grill them and get the black all over them, and then we separate that black skin, that char off of them, and we make jam out of it. Roasted bell pepper jam. Now I'm just going to kind of make these a little bit smaller here, and all this is going to be added to my olive oil mixture. You notice I'm not giving you any recommendations on how much to put in, because it frankly just does not matter that much. We've never had it be, really too strong in one direction. Obviously, you kill yourself with garlic, if you overdid that. I don't think we've ever made this where we felt like we had too much basil. So I'm going to add all of these into the skillet here in just a second. Okay, so I've had this oil sauteing in here with the spices and the garlic. Now we're going to add in the tomatoes and the bell peppers. In addition to that, we're going to add a can of stewed tomatoes, which I'll kind of chop those up when they're in there. And then some of my wife's homemade canned tomatoes, which are better. I prefer to just use that, but I'm trying to, have them last a year and not use too many jars at once. So we kind of mix them with the other. Now I'm going to turn up the heat on this a little bit. I'm going to let this saute for a little longer. I'm going to let a little bit of this liquid evaporate out. And if I feel the urge, I might add more oil, but we'll go to that point. Okay, now we need to get the lobster ready. Now there's several ways that you can do this. You can take your knife and just set it over the, I don't know if you call this a carapace or whatever, but right over it. And it can be kind of tricky because it's slippery on the top. Just kind of get in there and then chop on down pretty much all the way. Now I'll get this other side here where the hardest shells are. There you go. So you've split it down the middle. Now another way that you can do that, and sometimes this is easier, is you can actually use these, I think they call them poultry shears for doing chickens. And you can just take it, stick the end in there, and just actually slice on through, just like you would normal scissors. Now once you get it to this level, you want to, you can do two things. Now I'm actually not going to broil these. In this example, I've butterflied it out and sticking it out on top of the shell, and you can, you know, cover that in butter and garlic and, you know, broil it in the oven for about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the size of the lobster. But you can do that, and then you can take the meat, you can eat it that way, or you can go ahead and use that in your pasta. In this case, and the way you do that, by the way, is you just kind of separate the meat from the shell by running your finger in there. Just kind of, there's a little bit of membrane in there. And then you go ahead and you just kind of pull it out. Now, I'm going to give you some warning. Depending on the kind of lobster you have here, these things can be really prickly. If you can see right here, each one of those is a really sharp barb, and they also have barbs right here. So, you know, you can get yourself, you know, a pretty good jab if you're not careful. All those, I think they call them spiny lobsters from the Caribbean, they tend to have pretty good barbs on them. Where obviously they don't have those on the main lobsters. So you just kind of spread that out, and then you close the shell, and then you lay that out on top of it. Now, these lobsters are a little bit darker. They're actually, I got these from Costco. Usually they have the ones from the Caribbean, but these are actually, they labeled them as Canadian lobsters. And so they were a lot darker. The spines are a little bit different, but you know, we're gonna try those out this time. So you can do that. In this case though, we don't need to get that pretty about it. We're just gonna split this thing open, and we're gonna take the meat out, like you can see here. Now, and there I got my meat out, nice and easy. I'm going to cut this into chunks, probably, you know, that size. I want them to be pretty uniform because I want them all to cook, you know, at about the same rate. So I'm going to do that with the remaining lobsters here. I'm just going to basically end up with a big pile of meat, and I'm going to drop this in my pasta and let it cook for the last, you know, few minutes. And so you can also do this with shrimp, which is what we usually do, but it's New Year's, so we're going to take the opportunity to eat maybe a little bit better than we normally would. I find that this works a little bit better. You're going to get more flavor into the meat, and it's going to flavor your pasta a little bit more as well. Now you can see I'm getting these chunks of lobster. The last thing I'm going to do is throw these away. I'm going to boil these up tomorrow and make our it's kind of a seafood gumbo, and there's flavor in all this. I'm not going to get too much meat out. You know, there's a little bit here that'll come out eventually, but I get flavor out of these, and so I'm gonna save those to boil those up. Okay, so I added a little bit of salt and pepper to this as it's kind of been sitting here bubbling for a few minutes. Now it's good and hot. I'm going to start adding in chunks of this lobster. As you can see there, I've got quite a bit. I want it to be pretty hot because it's going to cool down a bit with all this lobster in here. You might say that's lobster overkill, but we're going to try it out. Okay, now you can see I'm just going to kind of turn it over so that it's all cooking. And we're going to give this a few minutes. I've already got the pasta going. So it's, you know, timing is a little bit of an issue anytime you're dealing with seafood, because, you know, you don't want to overcook it. You don't want to get rubbery. At the same time, I hate al dente pasta. I think that's crazy. Why would you want pasta that's just a little bit chewy? You know, I like it soft. I don't like it where it's swelled up the size of beach balls, but you can see that's cooking really quickly. You know, on the outside, you can cook seafood under hot water in the tap, so it doesn't take a whole lot. I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit. I kind of turned it down. And it's going to cook for just a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to add the cream, and I'll come back for that. Okay. Yep. Okay, now this is my favorite part, frankly. I love all that deep red color, and then when you add the cream to it, I just think that contrast is beautiful. And when you stir it in, I mean, this is where this really changes. The color changes, it gets more thick, and it gets just more decadent, frankly. One other thing I would say about this is, you know, it looks like I've got a lot of oil and liquid and cream in here, but, you know, that's what makes this good, and using your bread to get every last drop of that as you're eating. Now what I'm going to do is, as soon as the pasta is pretty much done, I'm going to drain it, and I'm going to put it actually into this so that it all gets mixed together, and then we'll serve it. Now my pasta is done. We use penne pasta for this. I like the fact that it's got the holes through it, and it catches a lot of the sauce and such in it. Now I make it, and then I just kind of start filling this thing up until I feel like I've got about all I can handle. I'd like to have a bigger pot for this, so that it would be easier to fold in. That this is the pot we've got, or the pan that we've got, but a little deeper one would be nice. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'd like it to be just a little bit thicker than this. But, you know, that's how it is. I probably shouldn't have added all the liquid from the can of tomatoes. If it's thicker, then it, you know, I think it's just a little bit better. But if I sit here now and I try to thicken this up, then it's going to, if I try to thicken this up now, it's going to overcook the lobster. And it will thicken up a little bit as it cools. So now we're done with this. And we're just going to serve it with a little bit of fresh Parmesan, not the Kraft stuff in the can. Use a little bit of fresh Parmesan on top and eat it with a good quality bread. We're using ciabatta tonight. And there you have it, versatile pasta.